Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Infinity Edge podcast for the summer split. We'll be covering the LEC and LCS in these videos, but the LCS is going to start first. Before I say anything else, I think I'll be a good company man and mention the promo code iEdge. I don't know if it's still active or not, but guess what? We're going to give you that code anyways. If everybody subscribes with iEdge, you get a discount. What's the discount? 20%? And what's the code? IEDGE? Are both of those things correct? Producer is giving me the.
It's somewhere in between 10 and
It is
20.
10% off.
Okay, that's what
There
I
you
thought.
go.
Yeah.
Maybe if John's feeling nice, I'll give you 20% off for a welcome for the beginning of the split, but probably not. But hey, at least I tried. I tried getting the fans something better, but probably can't do that now.
We did have the MSI 20% off when MSI started, though.
Well, see, I mean, that's a great point. I guess he's kind of painted himself into a corner, and I helped. So basically, in this video, we're gonna give our thoughts on the matchups, and in each matchup, we'll also give our thoughts about the team's season-long prospects and talk about the different roster moves that have taken place throughout the year. But before we jump into the actual games, I think it's probably good manners to introduce Alan 1 and Alan 2 for the first time this split, the Ghost and the Hef. How's it going? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been able to talk some League of Legends with you guys. It's getting hot here in the Midwest, and that can only mean one thing: that Summer League is around the corner.
It's getting hot.
Doing good, man. I'm fired up for the start of the LCS season. I was watching MSI and losing money and feeling bad about myself watching two teams go at it who are evenly matched like Damn One Gaming and whoever the hell it was from the LPL. I can't remember RNG. And I was like, I have no idea who's gonna win between these two. Neither does anyone else. What I really need is a 9 p.m. game between a CLG and FlyQuest to late night hammer the shit out of people again and just be watching that with 20 other DGens while everyone else enjoys their Friday night. So I'm ready. Let's do this thing.
All right, Ghost.
All right, that's going to bring us into our first game of the season, Spring Split, continuing on from, summer, TL versus TSM. Alan, bring us in on this one. Who do you like?
Did you just forget how seasons work? Like
I did, actually.
Just
remember, it's hot outside.
The progression of the year. Who do I like between Team Liquid and TSM? I think I like Team Liquid.
Give your season thoughts first. Season thoughts first.
So I think that Team Liquid is going to be the best regular season team for the LCS. I could see any of maybe 4 teams winning it all in the playoffs, but I think that like week to week, TL is probably set up for the most success. I think they just have really consistent players in every position. They didn't change anything. They were really good last year. They're going to be really good again this year. TSM, I think, pretty much exactly the same thing. They brought everybody back. They're all veterans. They should be pretty good. Loss should be another year better and integrated into the team. I actually thought he was pretty good in the playoffs last year, despite having some low expectations for him there. And I think that Sword Art has kind of integrated into the team and was one of the better players in the playoffs for the LCS. So I think I have Team Liquid 1 and TSM 4 in my rankings, but I honestly could see that flipped. It wouldn't shock me at all. But as far as this game, first game of the split, I think that Team Liquid probably comes in more prepared than TSM just because that's generally been the trend of the LCS to me. And TSM takes a little time. It seems like to get rolling, and they have the younger, less experienced coach. I guess they're both kind of similarly split wise, but I think that Jad has been in a more of an analyst role for a longer time than Bjergsen. But I don't think there's that much separating these teams lane by lane or anything else. I just I would go with Team Liquid winning the game, but it not really ending up being very fantasy relevant because number one, I think first games of the split are always just kind of slow. Like teams just feel each other out. I was trying to look into it a little bit today. It did seem like they typically had lower kill totals. I would have had to like parse out if that tracked with who the teams were and all of that stuff. But I think that that's probably true. It at least feels like it's true. And then these are two teams that I think play pretty slow already, and so I don't really like the game from a fantasy perspective. I'll probably use them as small stacks when I make lineups. The I'll probably use Team Liquid as small stacks when I make lineups with like underdogs because I think they're gonna win.
All right, Michael, who do you like between Team Liquid and TSM in our first matchup?
Sure. So for season long, I think that I agree that Team Liquid is going to be one of the two best teams. Personally, I do like C9 more still. I know that they made their change and we'll talk about that later. But Team Liquid um is definitely one of the best teams. And I think that if Santorin was in the finals against C9, they would have had a little bit better chance to win. It would have opened up the different types of ways that they could play the game a little bit by having him on more of a like carry style champions, which is generally what he's like a specialist in. The problem that I have is that they're a slow team generally for fantasy reasons. So the question becomes at that point, like, how is Team Liquid going to fit into this meta? So at MSI, we saw things were pretty fast, but the reason I think they were fast at MSI is because of the talent discrepancy between a lot of these teams. It just fundamentally changes how teams draft and how they can like approach the game. Because if you're RNG and you're destroying somebody 5 minutes into the game, the way that you're supposed to play the game if you're losing in that situation is to embrace volatility and just try to get back through not luck but like through chance. So for Team Liquid, I think that Alfari is one of the best top laners. Santorin is a good jungler, borderline very good jungler. I don't think that he's really as much of a difference maker when compared to the other elite junglers in North America, but still at least better than league average. Jensen, I'm not a big Jensen fan either. I think that when compared to the best players in the region, not as good as them, but still again very good and like has a lot of respect from everybody in the community. So he'll always be thought of somewhat highly. Tactical, again, almost the same exact thing. I think for Team Liquid, really the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like if you took these players and swapped them out with other players on other teams, I think they'd be a little better off. And then with Core JJ, I think that Core JJ is actually is an elite player in their role. So if the meta slows down, which I think it will, there are two things that are going to happen for with a team like Team Liquid. Team Liquid will either get large early game advantages and then completely dominate teams like 12-4, which is actual domination. Like people like seeing 24-0 and like 24-10 and stuff like that. I get it. You like to see the more kills, but more kills doesn't really mean that you have more of a grasp on the game. The flip side of that is, especially when two teams that are similar skill get together, if both teams are playing a tank jungle meta, which we might actually be going into, then you're going to have the teams slow down, be more predictable, and then you'll have more occurrences of large team fights with like 4 or 5 members in those team fights. I think I don't have numbers to support this, but just as somebody who's watched League of Legends since the first pro match that was like ever had, Team Liquid and TSM, when they play against each other, especially during the regular season, they generally slow things down and they treat it as like a very important match because it'll potentially be the difference in seeding in the playoffs. So for Team Liquid, I do think that I think I have them listed as my second favorite for the split. With TSM, I agree that TSM had an okay year last year, but I think they underperformed really relative to how strong they are talent wise. I think that Huni people hate Hooney because he gets a ton of deaths when he's losing. That Rumble game that he played in the playoffs, obviously that was very difficult to watch. And he will like hard run it down when he gets the opportunity. Spica, I think, is a very good jungler. Hasn't really had a chance to shine because of some of the other weaknesses that TSM has had so far. But as the team kind of gets more used to playing with one another, I think we're going to see Spica have much higher highs in this split. Power of Evil is one of my favorite players in North America. Um, and it'll be interesting to see how a player like Power of Evil lines up against someone like Abadage now, because I think obviously Abadage has more hype surrounding him right now, but if Power of Evil was in Europe the entire time, I think people would have a much higher opinion of him. Lost is a pretty good player, but Lost is the beneficiary of the rest of the talent that's surrounding them. So I think Sword Art will most likely have a much better split than they did last split. I think Speaker will have a better split, and that's going to allow players like Power of Evil and Lost to get into the early and into the mid and late games more easily, as long as Hooney hasn't completely given away the game in the top lane. So when I start thinking about how these two teams match up, I agree with Alan that it's really not a matchup that you're going to want to focus. Like if you're building 20, 30 lineups, you'll want to have some exposure to them. And I think that if I was trying to predict the ownership, I think that both of these teams are going to be in the like 10 to 15% range, because people are skeptical. Well, not skeptical. People don't know who's going to win the match, and people don't believe that the match is going to be high scoring. So, like Team Liquid, the top end of their percent owned is probably going to be 15%, and for TSM, the top end of their percent owned is probably going to be around 10%. So for DraftKings, you don't really need to play them, um, unless you're in one of the gigantic GPPs. That's kind of how I would approach it. And then lastly, I do think that Team Liquid is understandably the favorite, and they should be the favorite. And I was picking TSM against them in the playoffs last year. I thought that TSM had a really good chance of actually beating them in a few of the games and threw it away. But I have to kind of pick Team Liquid. I want TSM to win. So let's do that. You're on Team Liquid. I'm on TSM. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts from you there, Alan?
Well, I just wanted to talk about like a macro DraftKings game thing that I'm gonna try and do this year a little bit is I think I was looking through my results today a little bit, and after starting out very hot last split, I ended up with like a 5% ROI at the end of the year, and I think uh part of the reason that ROI went down so much is because I got caught up in the later weeks in trying to like play too many angles, and so like I think that this split I'm going to try and focus on a few kind of core plays and just like mixing up the 4 threes that I have with those core plays. If you don't know what I'm talking about, like with 4 threes and all that stuff, there's all kinds of stuff on the esports department that you can watch to learn how to build stacks and blah blah blah. But I think like for me, I think I'm just going to choose, a lot of times it ends up being like choosing the right dog in League of Legends DraftKings. So I think for me, I'm going to focus on like choosing one or two dogs and then kind of mixing them more this year. So that's why like for me, this game probably won't get anywhere past like being my 3 stack with a dog. And I'll probably just choose Team Liquid because I'm kind of limiting the amount of lineups I play each week too.
All right. Well, rolling right into our next game, we have Evil Geniuses versus one of those dogs you can probably consider, Team Dignitas at plus 125. Evil Geniuses sitting at minus 165 right now. You know, it's hard to kind of see how Dignitas is going to go. I've heard two different ways that they're going to need a couple weeks to get in their groove and get to where they were last time, or they feel like that momentum is going to carry over into last split. So, Michael, we'll start with you. How do you see this match playing out between Evil Geniuses and Dig?
Sure. So this is an interesting matchup because they're two teams that have very similar season-long prospects. I think most people, when they're putting together their rankings, are going to say that they have like basically the same range of outcomes. They could both be a 7th or 8th place team pretty easily. And they could also get as high as probably 4 or 5. I don't see them being better than probably 5 is really the highest that they could both go, because I think that the top 4 teams are just talent wise much better than these two teams. So first I'll talk about Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses is a team that I supported pretty heavily last year or last split, because I do think that they have like good players overall. I think Impact at this point in his career is actually probably overrated in terms of like what they actually give to you in terms of winning chances for the game. They can go even, but if your goal is to like go even, well, not their goal, because Impact can carry games. It's just I don't think that's how they're really going to approach most of these matchups. In a matchup against Fake God, maybe they say to themselves, we think that we can exploit Fake God, so let's put Impact on an actual carry. But in general, that's really not the play style that they're going to try to embrace. Svenskeren is a good player if Lee Sin is utilized in solo lanes and also pushed back into the jungle. I think that Svenskeren is a good option because he's a very good Lee Sin player. Dardoch is the same thing on the other side of the matchup. In terms of mid lane, Jizuke is a player that I like, but again, he is at his best when champions like Rise and Echo can be played into these late game situations, which is probably the direction that this split is going to go. Because in general, in League of Legends, the summer split is slower and more like structured and organized. Because when they get to Worlds, they being Riot, they want the game to be like a little bit more viewer friendly, with like more not predictable scripts, but more predictable scripts. You know basically where the game is going, and allowing the teams to kind of hold on and like scale allows the later fights to generally be more difficult to win for the team that's currently winning the game. And then we have Danny. I don't know anything about Danny, so that's a big question mark for me. Danny is replacing Deftly. Definitely wasn't a very good player, just in general, like talent wise. They were one of the lesser AD carries last split. So even if Danny is a lesser AD carry, it should be about what Deftly was. The only chance that at the bottom really falls out for Evil Geniuses is if Danny is like the worst AD carry of all time, which is unlikely, I think. And then at support they have Ignar, and Ignar is one of my favorite players. He's another one of my favorite players in North America. So if Danny is good, maybe they can get to be the 3rd or 4th best team in the region during the split. But even in the playoffs, if they manage to come in 3rd or 4th, I would just bet against them, because I wouldn't expect them to hold on against some of these better teams. And then for Dignitas, Fake God I think had an okay split, but really didn't show that they were like the core of the team. Dardoch had an incredible split. Dardoch's a great player. Dardoch's another one of my favorite players in the league. Clg and Neo, I think they both ended up performing above what we should expect from them going forward. And then Aframu is like, the quintessential professional player. He does what you need to have him do for to win matches in real life, but isn't necessarily thinking about like, if I die first and get 0 assists in this team fight, my stats are going to look bad. It's like, okay, I'm an Alistair. My team is losing. I need to find a really good engage for us to even have a chance at winning this game, and he's going to go for the play. It's like the equivalent of somebody like Hooney, who continuously tries to make plays while losing. So for that reason, I think that they will be able to compete with the better teams, but they're not going to be consistently beating the top teams. I think that their results from last season were very good, and I doubt that they would be able to replicate that. In terms of this matchup head to head, like I said, I think Impact against Fake God, that's an interesting spot for Impact. Dardoch and Svenskeren is really matchup dependent, although I do prefer Dardoch talent wise. Jizuke and Clg, I think Jizuke is probably just a better player than Clg. And then Danny and Neo. Neo had a lot of good matches last year, like where they were able to I think there was like back-to-back games where they had like 15 or 16 kills, which is pretty insane. Doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, it's great for DraftKings. And then Aframu and Ignar. I would probably say go with Dignitas for the salary savings. In terms of, do I think that this game is going to get out of control from a DraftKings perspective? Not really. I don't think there's a clear favorite in this match. So this is another one where I think that both teams will end up in like the 12, 13, 14% range. Um, and I could see Evil Geniuses actually being single digit, like 7 or 8%, and then have Dignitas be one of the more popular underdogs and get up to like 14, 15%. Um, that's how I would use them as a part of a larger portfolio. I don't think that either one of these teams will make it into my lineup though for like the King of the Rift qualifier or something like that, because I just don't think that's a direction you need to go.
All right, Alan, let's get your thoughts on EG versus Dignitas.
I think I'm pretty in line with Michael. I think I'm probably lower on Dignitas prospects, and I just wanted to show real quick why. Uh, Never mind. I guess I don't have that browser set up. I will get that. But anyway, Dignitas last split went 11-7, but had like the same gold type of stats as Flyquest, as Immortals, as CLG, who were all like 6-12, 7-11, 5-13. So that tells you that basically they won a lot of team fights from even gold states in their games, which is great for them. That's awesome. I think that there is a little bit to that. Like Aframu is a very good team fighter, Dardoch is a very good team fighter, and so maybe they will win those situations slightly more often. But I think that that's a lot more luck based than accruing large gold leads is throughout a game, and so. I think that Dignitas probably takes a pretty significant step back, and I also think that like the league, there's no longer like a complete dog shit tier. I don't think. With Golden Guardians putting some veterans in place, they're just probably going to win 3 games or 5 games instead of 3 or something like that. And so I could see Dignitas falling as low as ninth, 10th, something like that. And I don't see Evil Geniuses falling quite that far. I think that Ignar and Jizuke is a good enough core to be probably upper half at least. So I definitely favor Evil Geniuses pretty heavily in this game. That makes me nervous because every single time I said that last split about a Dignitas game, that was Neo Captain wins the whole thing, but everyone else also remembers that. So I'm hoping that too many people play Dignitas tomorrow, and I will definitely play Evil Geniuses, and I will play them in both the big part of the stack and the small part of the stack tomorrow. I think that they're kind of how I was talking about one of the core teams that I want to play tomorrow, and so yeah, I will have a lot of Jizuke would be my guess because he does seem to have a pretty high share of their kills and is a big part of their wins. Based on last year's stats, this would be a very bloody game. I don't know if that has any relevance to now. I put together like a bloodiness rating thing today, but I really don't think it means anything. We don't know what the game is like right now, I don't think, and or at least I don't. I don't understand the game well enough to have a prediction on that front. So I'm just gonna wait until the stats are there for that. But I think that Evil Geniuses ends up lower owned than they should be, and I think they have a pretty good chance to win. I think they're a decent bet at their odds, so they're gonna be a part of my core tomorrow.
Okay, so we're on the opposite sides in the first 2 games.
There you go.
Very fun.
I also
So Ghost.
yeah, I also think that like you could make it depending on the number of lineups you're making the first 2 games, like you can make an argument for playing either team very easily.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. So Ghost had to step away for a second, but the next game is a game that we probably don't need to talk about at all. So
That's
Cloud
probably
Nine
right.
against Cloud9 against Golden Guardians. Yeah, that's not going to be a good way to start the season for Golden Guardians. They made a couple changes. They made a change to in top lane. They got rid of Niles. They brought in Solo, and then at support they got rid of what was his name?
Newbie.
Newbie, and they brought in Chime. That's why I mean, going into last split when they made that signing, I just really didn't understand it. Like, if this was in the range of outcomes where they just like got rid of him and brought in somebody else, then I mean, it was obviously a horrible signing. But Cloud9 is my favorite team of this split. I think that there are going to be a lot of people that have big questions about why they went from Sven to King, and I am one of them. I think that the justification for bringing in a player like King, the easy arguments to make, and the ones that you'll probably hear on the desk, is like, oh yeah, King's a young player, hungry to prove themselves on the Rift, and like a bunch of garbage like that. He's like, he's the oldest player on Cloud9 right now. Like, everyone else is more experienced than him. The only player that would have been older than him is Sven, who he replaced. We know. I think that we may not know. King hasn't had the opportunity to compete against LCS level players very often, like on stage. But with a team like Cloud9, if you're trying to win now and win worlds, wouldn't you rather have a player like Sven who has more experience playing in losing conditions and still pulling out victories, playing in these more high stress environments? I just don't really know if I don't really know what other justifications there could be outside of them thinking that King brings in the ability for them to play a different style of League of Legends. So if King allows Cloud9 to play like Suning from last year, where they were a team that was just focused on really getting their AD carry into good spots for late game team fights, if King is that much better in that scenario than Sven, and I would completely agree with the switch. But then you're not utilizing your best player, which is Perks. So I just don't really know if it makes much sense long term. I would expect them to go back to Sven at some point. Um, but I'm willing to be wrong. Like if this is what unlocks Cloud9's potential to be a competitor at Worlds, then great. Like good giving it a shot. Golden Guardians, on the other hand, I think that they're going to be the worst team in the league. I do think that Stixay is an okay player. Ablaze Olive is an okay player, but hasn't really shown anything. Has shown less than Stixay. At one point, Stixay was one of the better AD carries from North America. And then Iconic, it's difficult to judge Iconic based off of last split because of the difficulty they had in top lane, which is ultimately a team problem. I don't think it was really all Niles' fault. In terms of DraftKings, this is going to be a very popular game for DraftKings reasons. I don't think that you would really want to miss out on like the guaranteed points from them, especially in like smaller field tournaments. So the King of the Rift qualifier #1, there's only 20 spots. I think that you'll probably want to find a way to get Cloud9 into that lineup if possible. That's basically how I would look at it. There is a chance that Golden Guardians tries to play the game much slower and doesn't want to get as embarrassed as often. But I don't. Even if they try to do that, I don't know if they could really stop Cloud9 from just trying to pile on kills and stuff like that, especially with the new AD carry. That's basically it. I guess that's just a blowout risk. I don't know if that's even really a thing that we should worry about.
Alan, let's get your thoughts on this one, Golden Guardians versus Cloud9, and what do you think about King coming in and stepping in for Ven?
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that either. I thought that Sven was pretty rough in 2020, I guess now. And then I thought he was really good at MSI actually. So it's pretty weird timing. Didn't C9 like switch out half their roster one time in the middle of a split and then bring them all back essentially? Am I
Yeah, I believe
remembering?
it was Sneaky and Jensen both hit the bench for a little while, and then they came back, and they
Yeah.
made that good run at Worlds too.
Yeah, so maybe they just think he needs a kick in the pants. I have no idea. King has been the best AD carry in Academy for a while. I thought the same thing about Diamond, and then he was terrible in the LCS, so I really don't know what to make of that exactly. I think, it's worth it to give him a shot if they really think that he's been behind the scenes performing really well. But like Michael, I just expect Sven to be back by the end of the season, and they'll be the same old team. I think they're either first or second. Nothing has changed for me there. Blabber, I think, is still probably the best player in North America. Perks is right there with him, and the rest of the team is solid. Fudge had a really good MSI too, and I think has kind of grown into himself. So I could see either Cloud9 or TL winning. I don't think that that's any hot take. I think Golden Guardians is the worst team. do think that they got better just by like bringing someone who is willing to play weak side into their top lane, and who has proven that he can do that role for many years in the LCS. He was the weak side king on FlyQuest, and I expect that he'll do the same here. So I do think that Golden Guardians will pull off a few more wins this split than they did last split. As far as like using either of these teams in DraftKings, I really don't want to, just because of the ownership levels and how I'm trying to play the game now. Like this isn't the week that I really want to use C9. I don't think. It's just like Michael was saying, that blowout risk makes me think that the game goes kind of slow. Because if C9 could snowball early advantages really easily, then it doesn't really get there in the kills way. I think that there is a tiny bit of an argument if you're playing the large GPP. Definitely not like in the King of the Rift qualifier that Michael's talking about, but I do think that there's a tiny argument to playing Golden Guardians. I was hoping that there was more to this. I was looking into today like teams coming off of MSI because I always felt like they came out and played bad, and I was completely wrong. They were like 10-2 or something like that. So that is not an angle that you should explore. You just have to think like, what is something that could bring Golden Guardians a win in this game? And I think like the it's pretty hard to come up with, but if they win, they are probably the winning stack because C9 every single time they lost last split, they blew it out big time. And I see that being exactly the same way this year. They kind of did that at MSI too. So they're gonna try and get back to the into the game from any gold position. And so Golden Guardians could luck into like a very high kill kind of game. And I think that like if you're saying to yourself, I want to play Golden Guardians maybe 2% of the time this whole year, this might fit into that 2%. Like when they play CLG might be another time, and when they play Cloud9, just because like the ownership is going to be so low on them, it's a pretty good chance to be really different, and you only got to play one or two lineups to get there. So I think I'll probably end up with a Golden Guardians lineup in the big GPP tomorrow.
Sure. So if you were running a 4-2-1 to get some of the favorites into your lineup, what player from Golden Guardians would you throw into your lineup?
It's a good one. Probably a Blaze Olive, I think. He's probably the talent that I would want there, but I mean, you could argue Stixay. You could argue that if you're like, who's gonna lose the least, Solo, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it from who loses the least. I was thinking like in order for Golden Guardians to win, I think that the easiest way to play the game would be for them to try to focus bot lane and like overload bot by bringing in plays from Iconic, and if they had their mid laner on something that could roam, that's fine too. But generally, the easier thing to do would be make sure that like you're bringing your top laner to like truly overload that side of the map. So I could see some like TP cheese in the bot lane where you like have like a 5-man dive or something in the bot lane, try to rotate that into dragon, try to get first tower off of that. If they take a slow approach to the early game, you're just asking for trouble, because if you're just standing there waiting for Cloud9 to punch you in the face, you have to kind of hope that when they punch you in the face, they don't knock you out. And they're pretty good at knocking people out. So I would say probably Solo. I think Solo is the one. Solo is the one who I would want, because from a DraftKings, like from a League of Legends perspective, if you just told me who do you think would be the best, I would say probably grab the jungler, like player agnostic, just think about the roles. I would say probably the jungler. But for a team like Golden Guardians, I think that, or for in a game like on DraftKings, you would probably want the top laner, because the top laner is going to get you like gigantic salary savings from Solo, and then you can fit in two larger favorites into one lineup. So you can fit like 100 Thieves with Team Liquid, I think. Like if you have an FBI captain stack, grab 4 players from 100 Thieves, throw in solo, and then fill out the rest of your lineup with one of the other favorites. And I think that would be a pretty good lineup that you couldn't get unless you drop down into one player from Golden Guardians. So that is an interesting kind of lineup construction to look at, especially in a larger GPP, because there are outs too. Even if Golden Guardians loses this game, if it's a high scoring game, you could have it. You could think probably game stack would work in this situation as well. So that's another thing you'd probably want to take a look at.
Moving on to our fourth game of the day, we have the 100 Thieves versus Immortals. 100 Thieves come in minus 250 favorites, Immortals plus 185. 100 Thieves brings in a new mid laner, Abadage. Seems like a pretty good upgrade over Ryoma, who we were pretty low on last year. So I'll throw it over to you, Alan, on this one. 100 Thieves versus Immortals. Who do you like here, and do you think this 100 Thieves team has enough to take it all?
I agree with what you said. I think that Abadage is a huge upgrade over either mid laner they had, Damonte or Ryoma. Um, do I think that they could win the split? I think it just becomes put up or shut up time for Closer. Like, if Closer is legitimately a top tier jungler, he can't have like huge lulls in the split where he becomes the worst jungler in the league for like 3 weeks and then kind of recovers again in the playoffs like he did last year. So so it really just depends on him because I do think that like the rest of the team is really good. I mean, Someday is a top 3 top laner in the league, I would guess. I haven't like put a list down, but I would think that that's true. Then mid lane, I think Abadaga is gonna instantly be top 5, maybe higher than that. Uh, and then I think their bot lane is right right near the top of the league, probably the best bot lane in the league. And jungle, it's like Closer is simultaneously sometimes the best jungler in the league and sometimes the worst jungler in the league. So I really do think it just comes down to that position, and I have my doubts about him performing when it matters. I think that he finds interesting and good paths to getting leads early in a season, and then he gets figured out a little bit, and he never quite recovers at the end of the season. I feel like that's happened a couple seasons in a row to him. So we'll see what he's like this year. But I expect them to be a much better team than Immortals. And so in this game, I would definitely prefer 100 Thieves. Last split, 100 Thieves wasn't great in their wins. They seem to take it a bit slower in their wins and die a lot in their losses. So, and they're, the second most expensive team on the slate. And so it's kind of hard to get the kind of construction you want, unless you're, going into that kind of stuff that Michael was talking about. And so for me, I'm sticking to 4 threes pretty much on this slate, and so I probably won't have much of either team. As far as Immortals, they're very boring team to me. I can't I can't really make that much of a prediction about them. I think they're going to be like 8th place again, and they're going to have a couple of upsets that make them look pretty good, and everyone's going to be like, is this finally the time that Xerxes is back? And then they're going to look the same the following week, and everyone's going to be like, okay, they're whatever. So not really a fantasy game for me. I expect Immortals to be 3rd place this year, or 100 Thieves to be 3rd place.
All right, Michael, let's get your rundown on this one, 100 Thieves versus Immortals. Who do you like here? Will you be for stacking 100 Thieves?
Yeah, I think I would take that risk. I would take that risk of 4 stacking them. From a season long perspective, I think that 100 Thieves will most likely be the 4th place team. I have been low on 100 Thieves just in general, and when they were Golden Guardians on Golden Guardians as well. But it's tough for me now because Someday is always a player that I've had a ton of respect for and had high hopes when they came over. originally, but nothing ever really materialized. So if this is the split where they're finally on a team that is at his level, then that'd be pretty cool to see either way. So I get the emotional free roll on that one. Closer, I think, is overrated at this point. A good player, at an above average player for the LCS, but it's just overrated when people think about Closer compared to like international junglers. I bet that their answer of where he would rank would shock you. Um, like if you really force people to make statements about Closer, I think it'd be pretty surprising. Abadage, a good player, definitely an upgrade over what was what they were running out in mid lane last split. I mean, he's much better than Ryoma. He's much better than Demonte. No one's going to tell you otherwise. I think Abadage's upside is probably the third or fourth best mid laner, in like a best case scenario. Um, maybe second, but I'll never say that Abadage is better than Perks going into the split. I would never say that. So that's really a big benefit for them, and that should help their team a lot. I think that Huhi is an okay support, has done very well, especially considering the role swap. I think that 100 Thieves' bot lane is also overrated. I still think that they're a top 4 team. I think they're much more talented than a lot of other teams in the region. But FBI and Huhi are two players who I think have just been historically overrated, and a lot of that comes down to the broadcast crew always talking about how good their bot lane is, and that's like a narrative that surrounded their team. When your entire team is playing League of Legends around you, which is essentially what happened on Golden Guardians, it's necessary for the bot lane to look good in wins. There is no way that they will win games without that being the case. So the fact that Demonte played an entire year of roaming champions, spoon feeding the bot lane, doesn't make me think that they are great players. It doesn't mean that they're not great players, but that's not one of the reasons that I would use to say that they are great players. They FBI is a good mechanical player, but I don't think of FBI as a gigantic difference maker when compared to a lot of these other 80 carries, especially in metas where everyone's getting spoon fed. You are the focal point of the team. That would be like giving a volume shooter 30 shots a game and saying, "Oh my god, look at him. He scored 20 points." It's like he had 30 shots. If he didn't score 20 points, there would be a problem. And even the fact that they did score 20 points is probably in itself a problem, and you probably lost the game. But that's just how I look at 80 carries specifically. They are the type of players, not saying that they think this about themselves, but the way that the community treats these players is they think that they're so much better than they are just because they're the ones getting kills a lot of the time. They get the flashier plays. It's just really not what's fundamental to successful League of Legends. In their matchup against 100 Thieves or against Immortals, I do think that Immortals has chances to win. And like Alan said, I do think that this is a spot where Xerxes, you might not think that Xerxes could really be back and like Immortals is actually a good team, but that is definitely in the range of outcomes. I think the best case scenario for them is about 6th. I could see them becoming better than Evil Geniuses or Dignitas. The chance of them outperforming both of those teams is lower. But I do think that's possible. I don't like Revenge. I think it's a bad way to construct a roster with an older top laner. I just don't really get it. Insanity looked good at times. Reyes and Destiny, I love being anti-Australian bot lane. So if they end up in 9th or 10th, I'm gonna be happy. But they do have chances in this matchup, especially if we're right about the game slowing down, because it would basically force 100 Thieves to be the aggressor, and if they start making mistakes, then Immortals could benefit from that. I will not be playing Immortals. I'm just aware that they could win. I could see the way that it could happen. The meta that we're moving into, I think, will be the perfect kind of meta for Xerxes. I said this last split, but the shift in the meta didn't actually happen the same way. They still found different. There were newer carry junglers that ended up working for different reasons, but we didn't get all the way back to like Lee Sin, Elise, which was more beneficial for Xerxes' playstyle. But the fact that we could potentially move into a tank style meta that would allow Xerxes to play tanks, but also play things like Elise and Lee Sin, that would be a big benefit for them. So I'm hopeful that Immortals will be able to be somewhat competitive with EG and Dignitas But if that ends up not being in their range of outcomes, I wouldn't be surprised either. That's basically it. I'm not playing them.
All right. We'll move on to our last and final game of the night, this Friday night snoozer. We have
What?
Flyquest and CLG.
What do you mean snoozer? This game's going to be amazing.
The Friday night snoozer, the LCS brand special. So I've heard a lot of talk about CLG. They seem to be getting better at the end of the last split. And now that their full roster is finally have their visas, they've been playing together. Some feel like they could be a middle the road team. Michael, I'll throw it to you first on this one. FlyQuest versus CLG. How do you see this one playing out?
Sure. So I think if everything breaks right for CLG, I think that the best that they could do for the regular season would be like about 4th place. I could see them being extremely competitive and match up well with teams like Team Liquid and 100 Thieves and maybe even TSM, because CLG is good at sticking around in games. So they will always have the chance to win one team fight and potentially win the game. It's really as simple as that. I think that Finn, still a horrible signing. I think that they paid way too much money for them, but Finn had a lot of good performances at the end of the split and is better than a lot of the other top laners in the region.
So outside of money, if we take that out of the equation, how do you think of him as just as a player in general?
If I was saying just as a player, I think that I would comfortably place them 1, 2, 3. Probably, I would group them together with probably Impact and Licorice and Huni. So those 4 are pretty similar to me. I would say that Finn is probably not as good as Huni because I love Huni. But that's basically it. I think Finn's upside is like lower than Huni's upside. I think that Finn's upside is probably higher than Impact's upside, and is almost identical to Licorice's upside. So that's basically that. Broxa, I think Broxa is a very good player. Again, another player that if Lee Sin actually comes back into the meta, like, because if Lee Sin is nerfed slightly, it's going to take away enough power from the solo lane Lee Sin. But I think teams will still want to utilize Lee Sin because it's just a good champion right now with some of the other changes that have been made. But Brox is another player where I could easily see myself saying that Brox is 1, 2, 3, the 3rd best jungler in the league. That's very possible in my mind. Pobelter is a player that I've been a big fan of for a long time. Fits really well into that playstyle that I was mentioning, specifically for like summer split, because the game generally slows down and you have these gigantic team fights. Pobelter's champion pool is perfect for that. Wild Turtle, worst player in North America. I hate Wild Turtle. I'm not going to stop hating Wild Turtle. But for DraftKings reasons, I think that you could always kind of justify playing him because of the playstyle that the team has. But he will give you some like mind-bendingly horrible plays and just getting caught out of position, which is always like gonna happen to him. And then Smoothie, I would throw out a lot of the results from last year for Smoothie because when you're on a losing team, you're generally just gonna have bad fantasy numbers. CLG can turn it around. Smoothie is going to benefit from that greatly, especially when we get into like a hard carry plus an enchanter support or something where Smoothie is also asked to be very conservative with how they position and like try to stay alive for as long as possible in fights and helping the AD carry. So those are all benefits for CLG. I like CLG more than FlyQuest for season long, and I think that they should be the favorites in this matchup. I think that Finn is just as good, if not better, than Licorice. Probably just as good. I think that's probably the best way to say it. I think Broxa is better than Jose Diodo. I think Jose Diodo is wildly overrated at this point. Pobelter's better than Palafox. Wild Turtle and Johnson are probably pretty similar. I would prefer Johnson because his name isn't Wild Turtle, but that's probably just my bias showing. And then Dreams and Diamond, Dreams, Diamond, Smoothie, I don't care. Put any of these players on either of these teams, it's not going to change how I look at this game. So that just means like, why wouldn't I take the better jungler, better mid laner? That's really like the core piece of most League of Legends teams at this point. So yeah, I like CLG better. I could see myself playing CLG in any contest because this is a matchup that I want a piece of. So I think that if when you're trying to figure out how you want to play this slate, you really have to think hard about this game and then figure everything else out afterwards.
Let's get your thoughts on CLG versus Flyquest.
Yeah. So I agree that this is a game that you got to take a stance on, I think. Like, I would not be surprised if the winning team tomorrow in the big GPP has a 4-stack of one of these teams. They were two of the bloodier teams last year. CLG kind of fell off bloodiness-wise towards the end of the split when Broxa came into the lineup, but I don't think that really matters. I think that because these teams are both going to want to win this game and think it's going to be important for their, playoff seeding because they probably picture themselves as pretty similar in the standings. I think that kind of game also just tilts towards more kills because they're probably a little more back and forth. As far as who do I like season long and who do I like in the game, I actually think I like FlyQuest more for the season long. I definitely was higher on them last split than most, and they did not show up that way, but they did do some things that I thought was pretty promising. Like, there were a lot of games where they had leads, and that's why their gold stats are near like 0, in a positive to negative way. Like, they would get leads and then lose from winning positions, which isn't a great sign, but I also think that Diamond was like really, really bad last year and just kind of would go in and like force them into bad stuff is what it looked like. I mean, you never know what a team's comms are like, but he was definitely the sacrificial lamb most of the time and looked pretty bad. And so I'm hopeful that getting rid of him maybe fixes some of that. Dreams was fine when he was on Schalke, is that right? I think so, right? He was with Neon, yeah. And he was middle of the road in the LEC. I think that probably translates to middle of the road in the LCS. And then I think Michael and I just see the mid jungle differently. Like, I think at this point in their careers, I would probably prefer Jose Dioto. I don't know what the meta is going to be like, and if the meta is not carry jungles, it could be troublesome for Jose Dioto, and probably a boon for Broxa. So that's one spot where you might look at and prefer CLG, but if I were just all things being equal, I think I would take Jose Dioto. And then Pobelter and Palafox, I think are very similar talent wise. They play totally differently. Palafox wants to carry the team. Pobelter plays almost exclusively for the team. So I don't think that there's like too much of an edge there. So I think I would play FlyQuest in this matchup. I think that CLG is going to end up pretty popular tomorrow, just because like you guys said that on a lot of the just not even like gambling focused podcasts, but everywhere is talking about CLG as kind of the team to look out for, and they're probably right. I mean, they do have a lot of veterans, and that seems to translate into fourth places every split in the LCS. But I'm hoping that it's time for some new blood, and I thought that FlyQuest was better than they were last split, and I'm hoping that they show that this split. So I'll play quite a bit of FlyQuest tomorrow, probably too much of FlyQuest tomorrow, but if they win, I think that I will. I'm setting it up that I will have a very good day, and also like it's the last game of the day, so the whole day I can watch and be like, oh, this 10
I got
kill,
a chance.
yeah, this 10 kill Team Liquid game, these people are fucked. Oh, Cloud9 only got 15, and you couldn't even play any of their carry positions in a captain. Oh yeah, and then we're gonna get to this game, and I'm just gonna lose to Wild Turtle again. But
Wild Turtle pentakill day one, calling it.
There
yeah,
you go.
yeah, that's probably an argument to play both sides, but
Oh my
I'm not
God.
really doing that this year, so I think I'm gonna take FlyQuest, and if FlyQuest wins tomorrow, you'll probably see me near the top of the standings.
Yeah,
I was gonna ask, would you guys like to guess the line on FlyQuest CLG if you haven't looked at it already?
I think that CLG probably started as the underdog and got bet to be the favorite. So I would say that CLG is probably minus 135.
Wow. I like that line. I would say CLG is like minus 180. FlyQuest is plus 140.
CLG is currently minus 120. FlyQuest minus 110.
Oh, all right. Well, so maybe because I know that like a lot of the non esports focused sites definitely heavily use odds in their projections, just like they do for, traditional sports. And so that maybe more people will be playing FlyQuest than I thought tomorrow.
Yeah, I do think that FlyQuest is a really good play from a DraftKings perspective, especially with the narrative that you're talking about. I think that you're right. CLG will get a lot of ownership. And if I was trying to think to myself which one of these two teams, which I think is going to be a great game environment for DraftKings, is going to be lower owned, I would say it's probably FlyQuest. You're getting a little bit more salary savings with CLG, um, in every role besides support, which it really does impact uh League of Legends DFS specifically because a lot of the optimizers are just trying to fit these teams together in as many combinations as possible, getting around the 50,000 number. That's not really necessary a lot of the time, but that's just the way that most people just think of DFS in general. So I think that you're just going to get a lot of artificial ownership on CLG because they're going to fit into a lot of these better stacks for C9 100 Thieves. So if you want to be different with CLG, you need to pair them with other underdogs, or well, probably that's probably the best way to be super different with CLG. But you'll need to be different. You'll need to think about how you're going to be different. You're just not going to be different by playing them.
All right. Well, do you guys have any closing thoughts on this slate or something you guys would like to see during the full summer season?
Yeah, let's go over what we think about the rankings for the summer split. Do you have it in tiers or do you have it in like a ranking?
I put it in a ranking, but it's really tiers. I mean, we can just go tier by tier.
Okay. So give us your bottom tier.
I think my bottom tier is Golden Guardians, Dignitas, and Immortals. I could see any of those teams coming 8 through 10, and probably not much higher than that. Dignitas is the one that I could, see jumping out. But when I like really like write down the names on paper and force myself to look at it for Dignitas, I'm like, how the hell did this team win 11 games? I think that Dardoch had a great split, and then Aphromoo is solid. But like Neo came out of nowhere. Saligo is not a player that I've ever liked and was kind of good last year. And then Fake God, I guess, young player could get better. So 8, 9, 10 for me. Immortals, Dignitas, Golden Guardians, but that's really kind of like my D tier or whatever.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's really just Golden Guardians. Um, the only other team I would even consider saying is as bad as Golden Guardians is Immortals. Um, just I don't like either roster. I don't think they have a lot of upside um through their talent, and they're not really building towards anything either. So it's like everything that could possibly be going wrong for these organizations is going wrong. My tier above that is FlyQuest, Dignitas, and Evil Geniuses. I think those three teams are very similar. I think that CLG is slightly better than those three teams and would probably be in their own tier. Uh, what do you think about those teams? Is that basically the same for you? Those four are a cluster underneath the other four.
Yeah, pretty much. I got CLG, Evil Geniuses, and FlyQuest. Is that
Oh
the
yeah, because you like Dignitas less. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, I could see Dignitas. There's a very clear argument for Dignitas in that tier, considering they got like fourth place last year. But
yeah,
yeah, but so I think that once again, I could see any of those teams coming in fifth. I could see any of those teams coming in seventh, but I think that they're that's pretty much their upside and their floor.
Okay, so then let's. Well, Ghost, do you have any takes on any of these teams so far? Do you think that?
Yeah, all that sounds pretty right. Golden Guardians, I am very low on. They'd probably be last. Immortals probably coming up at ninth. Pretty much solid down there for those two.
Mhm.
Okay, and then let's talk about the top four. The top four teams in no particular order. I think we can all agree are Cloud9, TSM, Team Liquid, and 100 Thieves. So if I asked you guys, what do you think the fourth place team at the end of the split is going to be? Who would you put in fourth place?
TSM.
I also think I would go with TSM, which I kind of don't like because I really thought that TSM played pretty well at the end of last split, and I could see them, reaching that level again, and they do have like a player that I think could be the legit best in his position in two roles at least, like with Power of Evil and Sword Art. But I I do think that Abadage is going to be really good in the LCS. I think that he was near the top of the mid lane pool in the LEC, and I think that that's usually translated into the top or near top of the LCS. So I think I would have 100 Thieves just barely edging out TSM.
Ghost.
I would have TSM in fourth, like I said. I could see maybe EG even taking that, and TSM being fifth.
Okay.
For you want the third place as well?
Oh well, I'll just say I think that if I had to put money on it, I would try to be anti 100 Thieves. So my fourth place team would be 100 Thieves. I do think that they have like a legitimate chance to win the split if Abadage is much better than Benson Power of Evil. Uh, that's really the only way that I could see it happening. So yeah, I'll do my third place team. My third place team would be TSM. So what do you boys think about third place?
Just got it flip flopped. I've got 100 Thieves in third place, but I could, like you said, see them winning the split. I think that this is a winning the split kind of tier for me. Like I could see any of the teams winning it. I do think that Cloud9 and Team Liquid are, if you were giving percentages to it, probably more like the 35% winners or whatever. But 100 Thieves, if it all goes right, I think could easily win the split. It would just depend on Closer being as good as people think he is.
Mm-hmm. Ghost.
Even though I bet 100 Thieves to win the whole thing, I think I still have to put him here just because it's really hard to put him above TL and C9 at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what C9 is going to do with King, and TL should, if they fix some of their problems early game, I think they're going to run over some of the bottom tier teams and then really give the higher tier teams like a more run for their money. They won't throw dumb games like they did last year.
Yeah. What did you bet them at? What was the line?
It was like plus 850.
And what do you think their percent chance to win the split is?
I don't know. Just I, I have a feeling that they can just go ahead and take this with bringing in Abadage. Like they're going to shore up that mid lane, and it seems like if the rest of us, like someday makes like resurgent, like this team could be pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that when Alan said like these are the four teams that have a chance to actually win, I agree. I think that I would put 100 Thieves at around 10%. But if everybody's right and Abadage is so good and Closer is actually good and I'm wrong that they're not overrated and like FBI is actually good and not overrated, then I could see it getting up to as high as 20% probably, but that's really that's the highest I would go. Um,
Yeah.
for
Eight
me.
so 850 is right at 10% implied too. So like I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
yeah,
You and the book agree on that one.
yeah. I know a lot of people. I know John said that he got it at like 1,000, which it's obviously better. It's not a ton better in terms of like
Yeah.
EV, but it's still he got it in good, so that's good for him. Um, for second place, I have Team Liquid, and I think that Team Liquid has about a 25% chance to win the split. Oh, and for TSM, I think TSM in third place has a 15% chance to win. I really think that most of the winning chances are for C9. But for Team Liquid at plus 250, that would, or at 25% would put them at plus 300. Their like odds are like plus 165 or something. Like I would never bet that in a million years. You can probably get them in that match for like at about even money. So like why would I tie up my money for a couple of months to do that? It just doesn't really make much sense to me. I think that Team Liquid should be better than TSM and 100 Thieves, but I don't know. I'm probably the most anti Alfari guy out there. I like Santorin. I think Jensen's okay, but past his prime. I think that Tactical, everyone hypes him up because they want him to be the next great AD carry from North America or something. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. And then obviously, I mean, Core GJ is very good. So I get it. I do think they're one of the best teams. I think they're the second most likely team to win the split, but that's as far as I can go.
Yeah. I actually have Cloud9 in second this time around. I think that I think what you said about Team Liquid actually being a better than the sum of their parts is really true, and I also think that that's a formula that's won a lot of times in the LCS. Like I remember those CLG teams, the one that had the best MSI finish, that Stixay driven team, like that's exactly what they were. Like individual talent wise, I don't think anyone thought that that CLG roster was the best one in the LCS, but they still have the LCS's best finish at an international tournament, and I have a feeling that Team Liquid just kind of gets it together cohesively better than any other team does this year. I still feel like Cloud9 doesn't play together at times. I still think that like their bot lane in particular has been kind of off script with perks, and so that worries me a little bit. And so I think that I think Team Liquid ends up the first place team this split.
Yeah, this is really hard for me to like go on one side or the other here. I'm a big Cloud9 fan, but what I saw at MSI, even though they did pull out wins against RNG and Damon Gaming, it was really hard with the low lows losing to Pentanet. Just should have never happened. I know it's a best of one. Like if it was a best of three, probably would have been turned around. But it does seem like there is not that mid jungle synergy as much as I would like to see it. It seems like even the mid or the jungle top works a lot better than mid jungle at the moment. So yeah, I'm gonna have to put Cloud9 second and Team Liquid first.
All right. And then yeah, I have Cloud9 first place. I think that they win about 40% of the time. 40% is at plus 150 and the line's below that. So can't really feel that great about betting it. That's basically it. I mean, people will probably give us shit for not being more like out of whack compared to other people's rankings, but in League of Legends, you don't really see these wild swings from most teams because the talent level is like somewhat apparent like instantly. So unless there are a couple of players that just come out of nowhere and are so much better or so much worse than we thought they were, then it's gonna end up right around this.
Yeah, I mean it's always just like the team that gets fifth that you didn't expect to get fifth, but like
Yeah,
that's not really anything, you know? Like it's never like
yeah,
the team you expected to get 10th got first, you know? So
yeah. You're more likely to have a gigantic disappointment than like a surprise great team.
agreed.
But
Definitely.
that's basically what happened with Team Liquid or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, Last year.
Right.
Hmm. And it happened in Cloud9 last year in the summer. So yeah, that's a lot more likely, I guess. So any other final words from you guys? I'm basically done.
I'm
Right.
good.
Well, if you made it this far, I want to thank you all for watching today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the Esports Department YouTube channel. Also want to thank Michael and Alan for joining me tonight. You can find Michael at League of Items on Twitter and Alan at LCS Picks. You can find myself at XGhostWriter90. And also, don't forget, if you want to support the show, you can get 10% off a subscription by using the code IEDGE to gain access to all the projections and both of our shows for Saturday and Sunday. Have a good night, and let's go win some money.